Okay, yeah, the Far Cry 6 DLC is pretty damn good. I don't know what's going on at Ubisoft right now, but why these developers are just working on DLC rather than main games, it blows my mind, because this is more creative, more interesting, and more fun than any Far Cry game that's released in the last 5 years. 5-6 years, something like that. I don't know what's going on at Ubisoft, but please make more of this stuff. But let's get into this. I'm going to review it. I'm going to tell you why I think that. We're going to talk story, we're going to talk about the world, and we're going to talk about the gameplay. Okay, but no spoilers, naturally, but there's not much to spoil here because it's a DLC, it's very short, and it's more me talking about Vass and his kind of mindset and stuff like that. So let's get into it. Let's waste no time. Let's go. This DLC, Far Cry 6, the Vass Insanity, I think they call it, is really good. It focuses on Vass. Naturally, it's called Vass, and Jason and Citra from the Far Cry 3. If you haven't played Far Cry 3, you're not going to enjoy it as much as someone that has, but it's still pretty good. So basically what this whole DLC is about is Vass, in his mind. You're trapped in his mind. You and him are just experiencing all of his memories at once through gameplay. You get to really explore what makes Vass, where he gets his lines from, what his mindset is, how he was manipulated in some ways, and how he was just batshit insane, and how he was into his sister, and they get really into it, if you know what I mean. It's very, very weird stuff, and I really, really liked it. Somehow, this tiny little story, it's like 2 hours long, but don't worry, the DLC itself is not 2 hours, but the story itself is like 2 hours long, depending on if you rush into the main missions, tells a better story than pretty much, well, not a better story, a more interesting and nuanced story than any of the Far Cry games have done in the last 5-6 years, at least the mainline entries. It really is pretty insane how they've managed to do it here, because it's all done through flashbacks, and these little scenes add more and more substance to each character trait of Vass, and character trait of Jason, and character trait of Citra, and you kind of start to weave everything together yourself. You interpret it, basically, and the story relies on your interpretation, because I'm telling you, anyone can walk away from this DLC with completely different interpretations of what this character is, what these characters are. It doesn't just explore Vass, it explores Jason and his kind of crazy turn to murderous villain in some sense, and you've also got Citra, how she manipulates people and where it all comes from, and her belief in power and stuff like that. It really does get interesting, and it kind of makes me wish we could get more with them, maybe even a whole mainline game. But the way the story ends with Vass, it suits him. It's very weird, it's very off-putting, and I really liked it. And if we leave Vass there, I'm happy with it. So if you want closure with Vass as well, if you didn't get enough closure for Far Cry 3, because that was one of the main complaints, is that Vass wasn't in it enough and his ending was very abrupt, you're going to get that closure here in some sense, depending on your interpretation. I love this. I love it. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of the story, that's where it goes, and it's written somewhat well. It's not perfect. It's all done through flashbacks, and they have a very limited amount of time to get to explain. Not explain. You're not a kid. Well, you might be. I don't know, but they're not force feeding you his character. You interpret it. You know, it's like being a therapist in some weird sense, if you know what I mean. And that really is the beauty of this little DLC, is that you're gonna leave this DLC with more impact on your thoughts and the way you think than anything else Ubisoft has done. I'm going to say that now. Anything Ubisoft has done last 4 or 5 years, not just Far Cry alone, anything Ubisoft has done, this just does more for their reputation than any of their mainline games. That's insane. This is just my opinion, guys, okay? You gotta watch other reviews, go watch Master Assassin, go watch ACG, go watch any of them, and they'll tell you something different. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of this DLC. You can come out of it with just completely unique viewpoints on it. Anyway, let's get to the world and the gameplay. It's kind of important. I know this review will be going on a little bit because I talked too much about the story, because I really liked it. Let's get to the gameplay. So, the gameplay, there are 3 main missions in this DLC. I know, only 3, mate? What are you on about? You've been hyping it up. Yeah, I know. There's only 3 main missions, okay? You do have to repeat these missions over and over again once you complete it the first time. So basically, the gameplay, the incentive is, that sword, that little machete knife thing in Far Cry 3, you have to get 3 pieces. That's where the 3 missions come in. You go to each mission and you unlock a piece of this sword, and then you go to the main area, you fight a load of waves, and repeat. Now, there is an open world. The main missions themselves, they're interesting, but they're not particularly well designed. They're just enough. But it's the creativity that really keeps them together, because they do some weird shit, and I like it. I really do like it, and it gets interesting. But there's also an open world, and in this open world there's different activities. So in your traditional Far Cry game, it's similar to Blood Dragon in many ways, but in a traditional Far Cry game, you earn some money, you go to a shop, and you buy a gun. But not here. Far Cry 6 DLC, Vass DLC, you go to these little challenges spread across this little mini world, and you can do gun challenges, like unlocking a pistol, unlocking rifles, unlocking sniper rifles, unlocking shotguns, etc, etc. You get the point. And you also have trials where you can unlock different perks, and you get this little bar you'll see at the bottom of the screen of the gameplay. There's these little perks that you can earn throughout the DLC that helps you, that empowers you basically, makes you stronger or weaker in some sense, if I remember the perk correctly. And it just really works. It's the best type of gameplay for a Far Cry game, and they've only put it in the DLC, and it just pains me because there's so much potential. I always say that on this channel, when there's missed potential, it pisses me off, but there is missed potential for the mainline games, because this DLC just masters it, in my opinion. So you've got these different perks, they affect gameplay in different ways, and the key to that is to level them up. And you've also got weapon customization in some sense, which you also have to unlock. And the big deal is there's stakes. Like, let me give you a real world example here. I'm sat in this chair. If I were to die of like a heart attack right now, I'd respawn outside that door, right? I'd respawn outside that door and come back in, sit down, and I just do it all again and hope for the best. That's where stakes don't exist. But stakes, I die. It's it, GG. And that's exactly what happens in Far Cry 6. You lose all your currency, you lose all your weapons, you lose pretty much all your progress if you die, which adds to the intensity. Now, I know some people are going to be like, oh, I don't like that, mate, I don't like that. And then the DLC is just not going to be for you then. You have to play through this DLC multiple times to unlock a perk that stops that from happening in some sense. You have to go back to your body to collect your stuff, much like, if any of you played Zombie U, it's similar to that. But the point is, there are stakes, and that adds to the gameplay. It makes it more intense, and it makes you feel something, and you walk away from the DLC thinking, you know what, I want to play that again. I want to see how good I can get at this. How many times can I avoid dying? Can I do this without dying at all? Can I do this at the hardest difficulty with the most basic weapons? Stuff like that, and it adds so much replay value to this DLC. You will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed. Everything you can do in Far Cry 6, which, by the way, Far Cry 6 review, it's on my channel. You can go check that out if you want a more in-depth discussion about gunplay and stuff like that. You can check that review out. I'm not going to waste your time here. Everything in Far Cry 6, the main game, you can do in Far Cry 6, the DLC, Vass DLC, and you can do better and cooler stuff. That's what sums it up, and it's really interesting. It has a better story, in my opinion. I prefer the story in this 1-2 hour DLC compared to the entirety of Far Cry 6. Let that speak for itself, okay? I really think you should buy it. I really think you should go out and support it. I know it's Ubisoft. I know many of us don't want to support them, judging by the current reputation or whatever. But go out there, go support the developers that made this, because it seems to be like a separate team that made this. I'm not too sure about that, but it seems like it. Go out there, support them, buy it, and enjoy the DLC, because it's really, really worth it. I know I'm late to this, but it's just something I had to get off my chest. I really enjoyed it. I really think you guys will too. But yeah, thank you for watching. Appreciate the support. See you in the next video.